Update 8 had dropped and gave us a new way to get more damage for our units, which basically would help us grind easier than before. Now what I'm talking about is the skill tree. Now a skill tree is where you can basically unlock skills which have different buffs. Building a skill tree from a unit has their own specific path depending on what or how you're going to use it. It could also be because of your traits in which would be even better with that specific path. So I am here to help to give you an idea on what path should you use. The first path is more on those units who have high DOT. For example, Almighty Radiant Monarch, Almighty King of Dragons, and Almighty Dracula's final evolution. Radiant Monarch can deal up to 140% damage with his bleed at max upgrade. Now stack it with the skill tree, in which it would double the amount of damage per tick of the bleed it gives to the enemy. For example, his max damage is 100,000. He will deal 20% of his damage per tick, which is 20,000 per tick for 10 seconds. Now, with an addition 109%, he will now deal 40% damage per tick, summing up to 40,000 damage. The next path is for DOT units that can be placed 3 times or more. Examples are the Demon Overlord, Solar Overlord, Flame Dragon King, King of Dragons, Bear King Unlocked, Crimson Demon Ninja, Curse Lord, Bionic Machine, and Shadow Master. This path is good for them since they don't have a lot of damage, so the plus 35 damage, plus 39% DOT damage, plus 15% crit chance, and minus 10 cooldown would help them more. Now at Path 3. This path is for Tower of Eternity. I said that because it has increased damage to bosses of 70%, plus 20% more damage and minus 10% cost to upgrade to units. Now the best units for this is Celestial Tyrant, Lunar Empress, Dragon Mage, Golden Adult, Shadow Dragon Unlocked, and Abyssal Warden. Those units should have Almighty for this if you are going to use it for Tower of Eternity. Again, this path is only for Tower of Eternity. Now at Path 4, Path 4 is almost identical to Path 3, but it has its own purpose. This path is mainly focused on infinite mode if you are onto leaderboard runs. The comparison between this path and the other one is that this have more damage to boss by 5%, cooldown reduced by minus 0.5%. The downside is that you get 5% less crit chance and 5% more cost of upgrading a unit compared to Path 3, which is irrelevant since it literally just build for infinite modes only. Now the only good units for this is Celestial Tyrant, Lunar Empress, Dragon Mage, Golden Adult, Shadow Dragon, Abyssal Warden, and Dark Revenant. You can also use this path on Radiant Monarch and Dracula's final evolution if you want, but I'm not gonna list it here since he is good with the first path that give him more DOT damage. Next path is for those units who already have crit chance and or crit damage as their passive, or a unit with precision, Precision 2, or possibly Apex since it gives 30% crit chance. It depends on you. The best unit to have with this path is going to be Expert Sharpshooter, Gale Sage, Bionic Machine, and other units you have with Precision, Precision 2, or Apex. I highly recommend using this with double trait for the units who don't have any passive that gives more crit chance or crit damage. At last, which is Path 6. Now this path had everyone wanting it even if their unit already have a lot of damage with Almighty, which is still good to be fair. But I prefer using this on those units who can be placed more than 2, so the best for this is those units I recommended earlier in Path 2, Grand Ether Knight, Sage Deity, Poseidon Sea Sovereign, Demon King Peak, Skull Vindicator, and more. If the unit is just a support, I prefer using Path 2, which decreases cooldown by 10%, and it will give you 35% more damage and 5% more range to have more coverage. I did not put some of the units in the list since I can't decide what is the best for them, like Chance King, the Pro Gamer, the Rift Sorcerer, the Cursed Knight, and others. This range definitely covered the whole map. It doesn't have any spot where the enemies would not get attacked by him. I'll place him where he would actually covers the whole path of the enemies, and let's compare it with Legion Veteran later on. Surprisingly, Legion Veteran still makes him covers the whole map. Well, it's only 5% more range difference, but I prefer Shadow Dragon since he also reduces cooldown by 15%.